All Might vs All for One is a battle that transcends time. They will always be enemies, and they will always be destined to fight. Even if, in the future, it's only their ideals that do the fighting. Recently, the last battle between them took place, and the best thing is that, even without individuality, All Might managed to go head-to-head with the King of Demons. That's what we're going to do in this video, and if you're curious, follow me and watch this video until the end. After All for One used a medicine made from rewinding, his body began to return to its previous state until the moment when it no longer existed. This gave him super regeneration while he rejuvenated, which meant that he was able to tank all the heroes on the battlefield and win in the end. His goal before disappearing is to get to Shigaraki and pass on his will to him so that the new king of monsters is complete. But before he could get there, only one hero could stop his advance, or at least get the attention of the All for One. This could be none other than the All Might who, even without individuality, sets out across the battlefield to buy time and fight this monster, even if it results in his death. With a cry of, "I'm here," All Might and All for One face each other. Then a suit of technological armor begins to envelop Hero Number One's entire body, as he remembers the teachings of his teacher and how a hero should always keep a wide smile. After that we can see the armored All Might ready for battle, while his virtual assistant starts recording everything for the fight to really begin. From HQ, Tsukachi watches this disaster unfold, while La Brava begins to preview the great battle that is about to begin. Tsukachi wonders if All Might has chosen where he wants to die, and that even with all the equipment possible, one without individuality wouldn't be able to stop the monster that is All for One. He asks him to stop screaming because what's coming is an ex-hero who has decided to sacrifice himself to win a few minutes, or a few lousy seconds, for his disciple. But he's going to die a terrible death as a result. Meanwhile, the All for One faces the All Might knowing his intention to buy time, but he still can't ignore it. With a sadistic smile, he asks why All Might is still smiling, while he prepares a massive energy blast. All Might runs for cover, while activating his Hercules shield. This energy laser passes through the shield and then cuts through everything in its path until it destroys several buildings. While the shield is completely destroyed, but from its wreckage the All Might rises. He heads straight for the All for One, who realizes that the hero isn't backing down. He gets angry because the All Might could only use this style of battle while he had the One for All. When the villain goes all out, several steel cables run through his body, preventing him from moving. Not only that, but they release an electrical discharge that begins to destroy the All for One's body from the inside out. He realizes that the electricity is slowing down his regeneration, while All Might is planning to attack him. He declares that the All for One always starts with a flashy attack to finish off the enemy and steal his individuality. As he speaks, his armor is upgraded to attack with maximum power. As he approaches to launch his attack, he continues to say that the villain's method only works against those who have individuality. Inside the HQ, Tsukachi realizes that All Might wasn't just sacrificing himself. After all, he is the man who has always saved everyone. The hero declares that he has thought of all the features of this armor and that it was his friends in North America who were able to build it, so he will use all the blessings he has received to oppose the greatest villain. After that, he launches his shoot-style smash, and hits the villain 3 times, declaring to his friend Tsukachi that he never went into battle with the intention of losing. All Might even teases him by saying that he feels bad being a 55-year-old man, and yet he's beating up a young boy, while continuing with a sequence of kicks. He plans to buy as much time as possible by using the mutual hatred the two feel, so he continues to tease the king of the monsters about being beaten by a man with no individuality. But while he's being beaten, the All for One prepares his colossal counterattack using 6 individualities at the same time. It launches an absurd shockwave that destroys countless buildings and throws the All Might away through several other buildings until it finally stops. After that, he realizes that the All for One is losing its cool. Then it's revealed that he was only able to survive this attack because he designed a protective cloak based on the Dark Shadow. But then the cloak was destroyed, and his collarbone and wrist were damaged. He sets his speed support to maximum as the All for One approaches, then the villain declares that All Might is just a disgusting piece of garbage who thinks he's too much after wearing a shiny piece of garbage, so he just needs to destroy his costume that's finished for the hero, since every item has a limit. Here All Might has a little memory of the first time he met his master, when he was young and thought that only his willpower and a piece of metal could solve anything. All Might quickly punches the villain in the forehead, but the attack is too weak to have any effect, whereupon the All for One says that he hasn't fallen for the hero's game, that he knows his victory is certain, so he stopped just to take out the trash. That he throws another shockwave at the All Might, while he tells the villain not to make excuses. As he remembers his master and how he became her disciple, another Hercules device is launched at All Might. It disassembles when it gets close enough to the hero to reveal a kind of injection that he applies to the villain. This is the super powerful pink acid injection. This attack gives an absurd amount of tension to the All for One's body, which continues to be corroded even as it rewinds. Then the two face each other once more. Here All Might remembers once again when he became Nana Shimura's disciple, or at least tried to, but was always rejected because he lacked individuality. He wants to protect others because he no longer has a family to protect, just as she does, but she's not interested in revenge. He declares that he will no longer accept bad people getting along, so he wants to create a world where people can smile, but to do that, he needs to create a symbol. This is his ideal of a symbol of peace, a pillar of society that brings security to people. Even if he doesn't have the power to do it, he's the only one who can, since everyone is preoccupied with protecting those they love. Even though he wasn't born with an individuality, he declares that he will do it. Back in the present, we see a huge explosion and an All Might rebounding from building to building after an all-for-one attack. Even though the hero is taking a beating, his goal is being fulfilled, he's keeping the villain at bay. While the armor talks about several broken ribs, a compromised lung and damage all over his body, All Might sees the place where he revealed his secret to Midoriya for the first time, then he remembers the condition for being a true hero. With his armor in pieces and damage all over his body, he stands up in front of a very young All-for-One. Then he realizes that perhaps the more damage he takes, the younger he gets. The All Might begins to laugh as he remembers all the moments as a teacher who guided the future, then calls on all his technological devices for a final assault. Here All Might is joking as he realizes that being useful to others makes him very happy. Then his armor gets a final upgrade, where he plans to give it his all so that, in the end, they can emerge victorious. His AGR weaponry has devices that simulate the individualities of gravity and propulsion, so Midoriya feels that All Might is fighting. Here we have the parallel between these two great battles, with Midoriya facing off against Shigaraki, and All Might giving his all against a young and superb All-for-One. The battle continues with the city being destroyed while All Might flees from the villain, mimicking two more of his students' individualities, Tentacle and Windy Froppy. All Might realized that the more damage the villain takes, the younger he gets. So he has to use a certain individuality to deal super damage, using more technical devices. Here the hero is cornered by the All-for-One, who mocks his escape after laughing so confidently. He says once again that he knows what All Might's plan is, and that he needs minimal effort to be able to win in the end. As he touches the walls, countless stakes start to shoot out towards the body of All Might, who then flies away. But when he looks up he sees two giant grotesque shapes waiting for him. He begins to be chased by them as they destroy his path. All-for-One even mocks him, asking where the hero's smile is. Without it, All Might is just a senile old man without half his organs. He also makes fun of the fact that All Might copied his students' techniques and still thought he could win. But in the midst of all this pursuit, All Might only manages to evade his attacks. Out of nowhere, the villain emerges from the wall behind All Might, declaring that his life has gone out. He then punches the hero hard in the chest, who finds himself alone in the remains. He then stands up while immobilizing the All-for-One, and launches a super attack from the sky. As he laughs, he declares that he doesn't intend to lose. Then a continuous laser wave based on the Aoyama is launched directly at the body of the greatest villain. The system starts to overheat at the same time as the battery is running out. But the All Might shouts that it's not stopping, it's going all the way. So the continuous laser keeps hitting the All-for-One with everything. All Might says he used this move as inspiration for the Battle of the Star. But since he can't solidify the laser like she can, he'll keep attacking to keep the villain inside. He uses another of his students' individualities, Sound Waves, but he only managed to escape this same attack because he sacrificed the Tentacle, and used the Invisible Girl's optical resonance to protect himself. He let himself be hit by the All-for-One to create this opening, knowing that it wouldn't attack his face to see his suffering. But All-for-One attacks once again using flesh vines that further destroy All Might's armor. But the hero uses more parts of his armor to mimic Mineta's grape juice, then throws it at the villain to keep him inside the attack. He knows he can't do any more damage than that, so he asks the villain to disappear before the joy stops numbing his pain. On the other side of the world, a child is watching the battle. He asks his grandmother what will happen if the skinny guy in armor wins or loses. And even though the outcome won't affect them, because it's in another country, the child keeps hoping for the noble hero. Then his laser gun explodes from overheating. All Might then finds himself in dire straits if All-for-One remains alive after this attack. But the worst really happens, because a younger All-for-One than before appears, declaring that every item has a limit. All Might notices that he's glowing, while the villain prepares his attack, declaring that the hero's face is missing a smile. Before he can launch his attack and kill All Might, his body locks up and he can't move. They are both stunned by what is happening. Without missing a beat, the All Might lunges forward to attack, and someone in the distance declares that everyone has red blood, without exception. All Might smiles as it's finally revealed that Stain was responsible for this breach, shouting, "Go All Might." All-for-One is paralyzed by the blood clotting. Stain advances with all his might towards the greatest villain. He scoured the battlefield and found blood marks that he could use. With his great sense of smell after his nose was cut off, he realized that the blood wasn't from the All Might. So he was able to use his individuality, and now the two of them have a chance to attack with everything. This is the fundamental result of that encounter they had earlier, even if it's only now that the All Might have understood. Stain is there to ensure that the symbol of peace lives on, so he attacks the All for One with everything. But here, blood begins to be expelled from the villain's body, then an explosion of blood stops the two of them advancing against him. Here, All for One has discarded all his blood, anticipating that Stain might do something, so he made some preparations for this moment. During the prison break, he realized that Stain had decided not to escape with the other prisoners from Tartarus. So he saw that he would become a liability, but Stain shouts that the blood is still his, while being attacked by the villain, but what All for One did was change the structure of his blood. Stain ends up being chewed up by a grotesque form of flesh created by the villain. All Might even tries to do something about it, but All for One jumps up and throws the Stain several kilometers across several buildings. Then he himself jumps towards the hero hunter while All Might can only look on. Incapacitated on the wall of a building, the All for One soon appears in front of the Stain, intent on stealing its individuality. All Might rushes over to try and stop him. Without reaction, Stain receives a thank you for his involvement in the evolution of Shigaraki and the League. Then All for One prepares his all-out attack to end his life. Before dying, he thanks All Might for teaching him about being a true hero, and wishes him to live on. Here All for One theoretically kills Stain with an absurd attack. Then the villain turns around and prepares another energy blast towards the hero. All Might is unable to react to this attack, but before he can be hit, Hercules appears as a final shield for his defense. All Might is then thrown far away by the impact of this attack. The only reason it didn't kill him was because of this last defense. In his subconscious, he meets up again with his master who tells him to get up, but also with the knighty who tells him that all his support and legs are gone. With that last attack, All Might lost all his armor, but he's not dead yet. So he stands firm with a smile on his face, declaring that the villain can come. Here the All for One finally reaches the range of the mud teleport to reach the Shigaraki, but the All Might is still alive. Now that it has finally reached the Shigaraki, it will transfer its copy of the All for One to it, and thus improve its original individuality. Before that, the All Might tries to get his attention, but he only cares about fulfilling his goal. He tries to force the mud teleport on Shigaraki so that Midoriya won't get in the way. But the Shigaraki rejects it of its own accord. All for One realizes that the Shigaraki has already overridden his consciousness. But it doesn't care, as it only needs to go to him. Afterwards, a child All for One carrying All Might by the leg appears in front of the marketing team. He asks them to show the hero's pathetic face so that he can pay for the crime of encouraging young people's dreams. While holding the Shigaraki, Midoriya watches the whole scene from afar. But he can't leave his battle, otherwise the Shigaraki will kill all the other heroes. He sees the terrible state of All Might, but he can't do anything. Then he begins to remember the important moments with his mentor. He wants to cry, but he tries to hold back his tears as he remembers All Might saying that he looks like a crying baby. But the trace of All Might had already said goodbye to him beforehand. He cries out for All Might as he remembers when he asked him if he could become a hero, and all the moments he had to overcome to become one. Meanwhile, All Might himself plays his final card, sacrificing himself as the symbol of peace. That he grabs the All for One, while remembering his master, and starts to blow himself up. Here we see the moment when his master sacrifices herself for the future of All Might. Even though she was weak, she stayed behind and faced the Demon King alone. But in the end she died a pathetic death, in the words of the All for One. But before she dies, she declares that All Might will win, because he's crazier than the King of Monsters. Then, finally, we see All Might sacrificing himself by blowing himself up with the intention of turning All for One into a little child. With his life flashing before his eyes, the All Might remembers when he was a child and when he used to watch hero cartoons with his mother. Looking back, he sees how far he has come, why each step seems so important. Back in the present, we see the All for One smiling sadistically at having thwarted the All Might's plan to sacrifice himself and die heroically. He grabs All Might by the neck and shows him that he used coagulation to stop the hero. To All Might's horror, he knows how scary wounded heroes are. With a macabre smile, he says that he's been looking forward to this moment, to see the utmost desperation in All Might. Then he launches a blast of energy that goes right through the AU, forcing the Gentle to keep holding the bar. Then he destroys all the jets of the Star Team, while Midoriya watches in despair, unable to do anything. As everyone watches, the terrible hour finally arrives when evil triumphs. The All Might is raised high as everyone mourns the inevitable death of the symbol of peace. To the despair of the Midoriya, the All Might begins to be broken in half by the All for One, that his body would be split in two for all to see. But before this could happen, a glow illuminating the darkness appeared on the battlefield. Incredibly, this is the Bakugo who has come back to life and has already returned to the battlefield. He and Midoriya face each other, so we can see that one of the steps the All Might took stands out from the rest. As the two of them reminisce, they think back to when they were children fascinated by the symbol of peace. But now they are the ones who will inherit all this responsibility. While All Might remembers Nighty's prophecy about him dying a terrible death, his body continues to be broken in half by the All for One. As the whole world watches this terrible battle, most of them pray and wish that All Might wouldn't die. Midoriya and Bakugo stare at each other as if they were communicating through their eyes. Then Bakugo lunges at Midoriya at high speed, who was already prepared for it. While holding the Shigaraki with one hand, he grabs the Bakugo with the other and leverages it, adding his strength to the Bakugo's explosion. The two face each other while the second user declares that using the gearshift again will have a big consequence. Even so, Midoriya uses it and accelerates the Bakugo even more towards the All-for-One. The Bakugo is then launched like a rocket towards the villain. But Shigaraki says there's still no time. He says that before, the All Might inside the Midoriya was just a flame because the All Might was still alive, but now it has started to take shape, which means that the heroes are all ready. He laughs at the death of the man who brought dreams to this world, and can't wait for it. But the Bakugo hasn't given up yet and keeps increasing its speed until it reaches its destination. Here Midoriya remembers all the times he tried to make the final destination of the All Might be different. But he thinks that this change can only happen through the energy of wishing for the future you want to see. Carrying everyone's prayers, and still remembering how he feels responsible for the end of the symbol of peace. The Bakugo reaches its maximum speed to grab the All Might without the All-for-One being able to react, and to tear off its precious hands. Midoriya sees the image of the All Might disappear from inside his body, while the All Might himself can't believe his eyes, but is answered with a cry of, "We will win."